Hey everybody, welcome back to the Friday live stream here at Way of Service, live every Friday at 3 p.m. Today we've got a doozy for you. I'm super excited about this one. Let's say hi to everybody and we'll get right into it. Hi Ian, hi Yale, welcome. Remember, any chats you guys give me, I'm going to read out loud. And also, any comments you have, I'm going to stop my presentation and I'm going to answer them because I'm here to answer your questions and interact with you guys. So let's get right into it. If you notice, the title of the stream is about Kriya Yoga, which was introduced to the West by Paramahansa Yogananda. And my thesis is that Paramahansa Yogananda, coming to the West, started the New Age movement in 1920. And his teaching was Kriya Yoga, the spiritual highway to God. Now, everything begins with this book, The Autobiography of a Yogi. And I realized that I read this book, I don't know, it was 10, 15 years ago. But, you know, if you've been following the channel, I've been on like a new spiritual awakening since basically last April. Almost a year, or it's over a year now. And it was only recently that I realized that I had read this book and it had this profound effect on me, but I kind of forgot about it. And so I got back into it in the last couple months. And I've realized that basically it lines up with everything that I've been studying, everything that I've been teaching, and it's just a vital part of everything that we're going into. And I've been so immersed in learning the lessons that Paramahansa teaches for meditation and listening to speeches by some of his direct disciples that are available on YouTube that I was like, I got to just talk about this time on the stream. It's where my head's been at for a couple weeks now, and my meditations have been getting better and better as a result of following his instructions and his directions. So I'm really excited to share, really introduce you guys to Paramahansa Yogananda, tell you about his life a little bit. You know, I don't want to get into the whole book, and I do want to do a review of this book. I started writing it and I was like, I can't do this on a live stream. I want to do this on an edited video. So I'm going to do a review of his book more thoroughly. But today I want to give you guys a quick understanding of where he came from and why he's responsible for the New Age movement and why a ton of the stuff that you probably already know about came from him in this very early time, 1920. And it actually began in 1861 when the guru of his guru, there's a lineage of gurus, so let's take a look at this line, right? And they say that this is the same lineage through which Jesus learned, and this might be controversial, but you know, in the lost years of Jesus, there are some records that have him going to the East and studying with some masters. And so Babaji, who's right next to Jesus there, you have Jesus, Babaji, Lahiri Mahashai, Sri Yukteswar, and Paramahansa Yogananda. So that's the line of gurus. And in 1861, Babaji taught Kriya Yoga to Lahiri, who then taught Yukteswar, and then he taught Paramahansa Yogananda. And Yogananda came to the West in 1920. Hey, Ryan and Praise Christ are here too. Great to have you guys. The link you received didn't bring you the live show. I don't know. I had some, that's why I'm late. I was having technical issues. I don't know. I think that maybe God has to line everything up. Maybe the people who have to hear what I have to say were going to be a little late. So this is why some of this stuff happens sometimes. So back to this slide. I just want to go a little bit more over this book and how awesome it is. I can't recommend it enough. It's written at such a high level, even though English is his second language. I think in my studies, I've done a lot of research trying to present this book, and I realized, like I said, I have to make a video about it. But from what I remember, this is one of the few books created by an Indian spiritual master in English, written by him in English. It's riveting from the very first page. The first page starts to describe his recollection of previous lives and his recollection from birth of his life in a very profound way. And basically there's a miracle every 2 or 3 pages. Just another description of how God intervened and how synchronicity worked out to line him down his path. And in the book, he describes the lives of his predecessors, of Lahiri and Yukteswar, who is his guru. And of the prophecies given by them that he would come to the West to spread yoga. So who was Yogananda? I got this. I've been working with AI to help me with some of this stuff, and this is what we got. And I gave it my thesis that he started the New Age movement, and this is what it gave me. Imagine if someone arrived in America in 1920 and single-handedly introduced concepts that are now so common we take them for granted. Meditation for health, yoga as wellness, the idea that all religions share the same truth, and the belief that anyone can achieve enlightenment through proper technique. That person was Yogananda, and despite living in a world that he fundamentally shaped, most people have never heard his name. I think that's true. Before Yogananda, Eastern spirituality was exotic and foreign. Meditation was unknown in mainstream America. Mystical experiences were religious anomalies. Different religions were seen as incompatible, and spirituality required faith without experience. Now, after Yogananda's work, meditation became accepted for health and success. Spiritual but not religious became legitimate, and personal spiritual experience trumped institutional authority. Eastern concepts like karma and chakras entered the common vocabulary, and spirituality became scientific and practical. So some of the things that he brought were democratizing mystical experience. He made it accessible to householders, not just monks. This was a big moment in the autobiography. I remember Babaji was like, I'm only giving this to people who renounce their physical lives, and that is monks. And Lahiri Mahashai begged him to allow him to teach it to householders and all the people in the cities who, as he says, he had heard their prayers. And Babaji said, from God's mind to your lips, let it be so. And so he gave him permission to teach these methods to householders. Scientific spirituality. He presented meditation as a measurable, repeatable practice. Universal religious philosophy. He taught that all religions contain the same essential truths. Practical metaphysics. He introduced visualization, affirmation, and energy work. Something we talk about on this channel. Energy work and the energy body and the chakras. These all come through Paramahansa's teachings. And I'm sure there were other people who taught these things, but I think that Paramahansa predates most of them. The direct New Age concepts that he pioneered. So chakras and energy healing, scientific affirmations, manifestation techniques, the guru-disciple consciousness transmission, cosmic consciousness expansion, which is connection to God, and personal spiritual authority over institutional religion, which I believe is a hallmark of the New Age. And kind of what we're doing here, right? As we all gather together, we are trying to figure it out ourselves instead of asking some priest for the answer. I'm going to skip through some of this. I wanted to mention, so his Autobiography of a Yogi became one of the most influential spiritual books ever written, millions of copies, and Steve Jobs reread it every year. So Paramahansa was a direct influence on Steve Jobs, who created Apple, which was the most valuable American company up until NVIDIA took it over a couple years ago. Also, George Harrison of the Beatles was a devout student of Paramahansa. Not directly, I don't believe, but he reread and he wrote a song, Dear One, is dedicated to Paramahansa Yogananda. If you guys know anything about the Beatles, they took a trip to India, to Rishikesh, to meditate. So this is all related to the influence of Paramahansa, and through the Beatles, yoga gained a large audience in the West. So this is just some of the little hallmarks of what happened with Paramahansa. So as I said, Lahiri met Babaji, and Babaji is this mythical figure that is really probably the most incredible part of the whole story. So I don't want to read all of this, but I want to share. Let's see here. So Lahiri was born in 1828. He was a direct disciple of Babaji. and he is believed to have met him on November 27th, 1861. So there is a record of Babaji existing. However, Babaji, so just to tell you, okay, they say Babaji is still alive. He's been alive for hundreds of years. He's eternally youthful. And he is the one who taught Lahiri, who taught Sri Yukteswar, who taught Paramahansa this method of Kriya Yoga. There are no historical records relating to the birth and life of Mavatar Babaji. Yogananda has written in the Autobiography of a Yogi that the deathless avatar has resided for untold years in remote Himalayan regions of India, revealing himself only rarely to a blessed few. It is Mavatar Babaji who revived in this age the lost scientific meditation technique of Kriya Yoga. In bestowing Kriya on his disciple Lahiri, Babaji said, "The Kriya Yoga that I am giving the world through you in this 19th century is a revival of the same science that Krishna gave millenniums ago to Arjuna, and that was later known to Patanjali and Christ, and to St. John, St. Paul, and other disciples." Shortly after Paramahansa left for America, Babaji came to Yogananda's home in Calcutta, where the young monk sat deeply praying for divine assurance regarding his mission to the West that he was about to take. Babaji said to him, "Follow the behest of your guru and go to America. Fear not, you shall be protected. You are the one I have chosen to spread the message of Kriya Yoga in the West." So, just to review here, as he says here, this is the same science. Kriya Yoga is the same meditation science that Krishna gave to Arjuna and that was later taught to Patanjali and Christ and St. John and St. Paul and other disciples. And Yogananda was chosen to spread the message to the West. Welcome, Susan. Praise Christ Yoga says she's reading the autobiography. I confirm that. Pretty excited that you're reading it. All right, so Yogananda was born in he was born as Mukunda Lal Ghosh. His religious name became Paramahansa Yogananda. Born January 5th, 1893 in Gorakhpur, India. At age 8, he had a miraculous healing that's described in the Autobiography of a Yogi when he contracted Asiatic cholera and was near death. His mother prayed to the Divine Mother, and he experienced a complete instantaneous healing, his first direct experience of divine intervention, all described in Autobiography of a Yogi. He also had a prophetic birth chart that indicated he would be a world teacher who would bring Eastern wisdom to the West. This prophecy was given in the 1890s when he was born, when few Indians traveled to the West. And here I want to mention, because I was just speaking with one of my Mormon friends talking about, Joseph Smith and one of the speeches he gave, and he kind of describes the afterlife the same way that the Hindus describe the afterlife, or as Yogananda describes it. And Smith died in, I believe I just looked it up, like 1840. So this mid-1800s time, to me, seems to be a revolutionary period. Also, that's when the Civil War happened, slavery was abolished. So if we can imagine that there was kind of a spiritual movement that started at that time, and at that time, think about how different things were, how hostile the world was, or the Western world was, to any of these Eastern philosophies, right? Joseph Smith was killed because he was teaching a plurality of gods. That was what was in the newspaper. I was just reading the account of how he died. This newspaper published this report about him, and then the newspaper was somehow destroyed. I didn't get back that far back, but he was arrested for it, and then he was killed by a mob. So that was the circumstances of his life, and this was right after he had given a speech relating that the afterlife contained multiple gods and multiple universes and multiple lives and all these things. Praise Christ Yoga says, "I have missed this hour. Thank you for doing this." Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing your appreciation. It really means a lot when you guys tell me that you enjoy this, because sometimes I'm not sure if you don't tell me. And hit that like button. That also tells me that you liked it. Only hit it if you like it. She says, "Me and Matthew out here out in the hammock, as you teach us. This is so cool. It is enlightening. Thank you for bringing us all here, starting the gathering, even if it's just for an hour. Oh, I don't know if you were here. I'm not necessarily going to end it through 4 o'clock. I'm going to start at 3. That's the plan, and then go through until whatever time makes sense. I might end it at 4. I might end it at 3:45. Definitely not today. I have way too much stuff to cover. I'm guessing today I'm probably going to go to 4:30, but we'll see how it goes. We'll see how the flow goes through here. Let me know in the chat how you guys are enjoying this. We got 5 viewers. That's great. Say hi in the chat. Let me know what you think. I'm going to go to the next slide. So in Yogananda's autobiography, he describes his search for a guru, and here's some highlights. From his teens, Mukunda, that was his name, was consumed with finding his guru, and that's true. It's basically the whole first third of the book is him trying to find his guru. And it wasn't casual. He literally wandered India, visiting every holy man and spiritual teacher he could find, knowing he was destined for a specific master. And the description of the abilities of some of these spiritual masters is, again, mind-blowing. Every 3 pages, I'm not exaggerating, there's another miracle or spiritual experience described. And you really have to, in order to not believe Yogananda, you have to call this man a liar, which to me is nuts. I mean, if you read his book and you study his legacy, he wasn't lying. And so it's very confronting to someone who might not believe in miracles. I thoroughly believe in miracles. I've experienced them in my life, so I have no doubt. But you either read the book thinking this is a crazy story that somebody made up, and then it's really on you to show how he could have made up this story, which is verified by other people. There's plenty of evidence, there's plenty of witnesses, and all these things. So, anyways, so then in 1910, at age 17, he met Sri Yukteswar Giri in Benares. The moment they met, Yukteswar said to him, "Oh, my own boy, you have come," as if he had been waiting for him, and Mukunda immediately recognized this was his destined guru. Yukteswar then told young Mukunda that his destiny was to carry the ancient science of Kriya Yoga to the West. This seemed absurd at the time. Who would listen to a young Indian in America? During meditation, Mukunda received visions of himself teaching large crowds of Westerners, seeing faces of people who he would one day meet in America. These visions sustained him through years of preparation. In 1920, seemingly out of nowhere, he received an invitation to speak at an International Congress of Religious Liberals in Boston. This wasn't random networking, it was divine orchestration, providing the exact opening he needed. But before leaving India, he received this vision. So he had started a school for young men in teaching yoga, and he described how he could only find, there was one spot in his tiny closet, like behind some books, where he could go and hide, and that's where he could meditate. Otherwise, somebody was always bothering him. So he described that spot, and then he described how he was in a meditation and he had a vision of himself going to America. And so immediately he began preparing to go to America. I think he might have left like the next day. But before leaving India, he had a profound vision where he saw his future work. This is what I just described. And so then he prayed. He was scared to go to America for a lot of reasons. He wasn't sure. His autobiography is filled with, like, even though he's a God-realized master, it didn't happen until, a good way into his training. And like all of us, he doubts things. He needs constant signs and reassurance that God is showing him the way. So just because he had a vision of going to America, he was pretty sure he was going, but he needed to be totally sure. And he prayed, and he said he was going to pray until he died, until he got an answer of, will I be okay if I go to America, or will I fall into the materialism that the West is known for? And that's when Babaji knocked on his door, right? This immortal Babaji who, again, the descriptions of him are that he is hundreds of years old. He lives in the Himalayas to this day. He took a pledge, it's in the autobiography, that he would live in that physical body until the end of time. So Babaji knocked on his door and told him, as we saw here, did I put it? Yeah. He said to Babaji, or he said to Yogananda, follow the behest of your guru and go to America. Fear not, you shall be protected, because he was afraid of falling into the materialism. He says, you are the one I have chosen to spread the message of Kriya Yoga in the West. So he then traveled to the West. All right, so that's Yogananda, at least the introduction of who he was. Here's some quotes from Yogananda. I picked out just a couple. He has a ton of quotes. He's written many, many books above and beyond Autobiography of a Yogi. Live each moment completely, and the future will take care of itself. Fully enjoy the wonder and beauty of each moment. Very similar to some of the Lao Tzu quotes we listened to last week. From wonder to wonder, existence opens. And, of course, living in the present. Be as simple as you can be. You will be astonished to see how uncomplicated and happy your life can become. Again, last week, Lao Tzu said, I have but 3 things to teach you. Simplicity, patience, and compassion. This is simplicity. Be as simple as you can be. You will be astonished to see how uncomplicated and happy your life can become. There is a magnet in your heart that will attract true friends. That magnet is unselfishness, thinking of others first. When you learn to live for others, they will live for you. Way of service, right? So his teachings flow perfectly in with all the other masters that I've been sharing on this channel. The idea that the heart is a magnet is also something we've been talking about. I mentioned in a previous stream, the heart is 6,000 times more powerful than the brain in terms of the electromagnetic field. You think of the brain and all the electricity moving through the neurons in the brain, but because they are not aligned, the heart, the neurons and the muscular junctions in the heart are aligned. And that alignment creates a 6,000 times more strong electromagnetic field. And that is a magnetic power, right? This is science. This is a scientific understanding of how magnetism works. But we don't apply it to our heart and to our life, which is really the most profound understanding of magnetism, is how it affects what is drawn into our life, what is repulsed out of our life. It's based on the frequency and the magnetic properties of our heart. Forget the past. It is gone from your domain. Forget the future. It is beyond your reach. Control the present. Live supremely well now. This is the way of the wise. So Yogananda came to the West in 1920, and in 1925 he founded the Self-Realization Fellowship. And they are still very active, very, very large, great group of spiritual seekers. They have a YouTube channel, and it puts out a video almost every day. They have an app that's connected to becoming a student, which I have become. I've become a student, and I suggest that you guys do as well. And if you do, we can share the journey together, because they only let you see each lesson every 2 weeks. So you got to get started sooner than later. And I'm sworn to not share the direct information that's in the lessons. I can share the general ideas, but I'm not supposed to give you the exact techniques of Kriya Yoga, because they are supposed to come from Paramahansa through the Self-Realization Fellowship. And this is a picture of their campus, one of their campuses. They have many temples in California, and I think they have others spread around the country. And there's a meditation group in pretty much every city when I looked on the website. So what is Kriya Yoga? They also talk about Raja Yoga. So it's called King Yoga. Kriya is related to the word karma, which means action. So it's action yoga. It's like the process of yoga. What is yoga? As defined by Paramahansa Yogananda, it is the system of scientific methods for reuniting the soul with the spirit and God. So it's reuniting our consciousness with our own spirit and with God. So this is basically a definition of meditation. Susan says, I love that first saying and the second saying too. I'm glad you like them. Heidi says, there is one in Provo. Yeah, there's one in many places. Self-Realization Fellowship has a lot of activity going on. And we are going to I'm going to share with you. I found one of my favorite speakers. He's a direct disciple. I'm getting ahead of myself, but he's a direct disciple of Yogananda, and we're going to be watching some of his stuff today. And I have a special treat for you in just a moment here. Yogananda on Kriya Yoga. From the Autobiography of a Yogi, Chapter 26, The Science of Kriya Yoga. Introspection, or sitting in the silence, is an unscientific way of trying to force apart the mind and senses, tied together by the life force. The contemplative mind, attempting to return to divinity, is constantly dragged back towards the senses by the life currents. Kriya, controlling the mind directly through the life force, is the easiest, most effective, and most scientific avenue of approach to the infinite. In contrast to the slow, uncertain bullock cart of the theological path to God, Kriya may be justly called the airplane route. So his analogy there, I believe I read this recently, he talks about, you can get from New York to Los Angeles any number of ways. You can walk, you can take a bullock cart, or you can take an airplane. And so there are many routes to God, but he argues that Kriya is the fastest way. It's the airplane route handed down to us through the lineage that traces back to Jesus Christ. So become a student like me. Go to yogananda.org to get started. So I want to introduce to you the gentleman. Oh, actually, sorry, I mentioned we have a treat. So I want to share this with you before we move on. I'm excited to share this. The words of Paramahansa Yogananda on Kriya Yoga.
Life is a test.
Oops.
This life is a test. Why did Christ say that ordinary people seek the world, but all who are wise seek the kingdom of God? Because there is your happiness. There is your fulfillment of all the dreams of incarnations. That's why you should learn to meditate, become a spiritual alcoholic, where you will be so drunk with that joy that you will be able to do other works of the world and yet not be mixed up with it. So you must practice the presence of God, and in Kriya Yoga is one of the greatest proofs of the existence of God. Practice Kriya, and you will not suffer from moods. You who love experimenting with so many things, why don't you experiment with yourself and Kriya Yoga? In the calm, concentrate your mind in the spine, and there you will find, as one person wrote to me, I suddenly found my breath gone, and I settled myself in the spine and had the great visitation of the Almighty, ever new joy of God. God is ever new joy. In the mirror of his sphere, you will find the universe glimmering. So remember the purpose of this great message. We have started a great movement, and I came for a special dispensation, the interpretation of the scriptures, and giving the Kriya Yoga, the key to heaven. This is Peter's key to heaven. You can use it yourself with the help of the gurus, but join our churches regularly. Re-study the preceptor regularly. You can do it by yourself. The charcoal doesn't become red by itself. But when the fire enters, it all becomes red and glowing. Through the fire of the teaching of self-realization and the Guru's contact, through the teachings and practicing the teaching, you get that contact more than by only visiting the Guru, because he is busy for you. He is busy with God. Yoga means union, scientific union with God, that you are receiving. Dump your body in the superconscious. That's all I do. I practice a few times Kriya, and I dump my body, and the body is gone. And I am in infinite bliss, the bliss that surpasseth any description. So you all came from that. It is not the privilege of Christ and a few masters to go there. All waves, behind small and big waves, waves that are playing with the storm is the same ocean. Remember, no matter what your trouble is, God is with you, behind you. Seek Him. Help Him to pull you and make you as He is.
Yep, that was Yogananda. So we actually have tapes of Yogananda giving instruction, and some of them are available for free on their YouTube channel. All right, so next we're going to listen to Brother Anandamoy, and his presentations are just fantastic. I can't recommend them enough. I've been binging them lately. Anandamoy, who was born in 1949, he took a final lifelong vow. I'm sorry, maybe he took his vow in 49, or yeah, I'm not sure. Anyways, a lifelong vow of renunciation in the Self-Realization Fellowship Order, devoting his life fully to the SRF worldwide mission begun by Yogananda. Anandamoy served Yogananda's work for 67 years until his death in 2016. There are many recordings of his talks regarding Yogananda's teachings. There are 8 DVDs and 6 CDs available. So we're going to listen to a little bit of Anandamoy, and he's going to say Guruji and Master, and that's who he's talking about. He's talking about Paramahansa, because he studied directly under Paramahansa. And I want you to notice that he's so awesome to listen to, because he sounds just like Yoda. All right? You ready for this? All right, so we're going to do some video review. The first video is called You Can Know God in This Life. All right? So, I just got to put it in the right format here. There we go. Da-da-da. And then we're looking for 255. Everything's live, guys. Everything's live, okay? That's what happens when it's live.
I think one of the reasons why people may be discouraged. I had myself that experience. When I started with the lessons, one after the other came, and I thought, it is incredible, all that.
I just realized, I'm sorry, I want you guys to get a real introduction from him, so we're going to start at the beginning here, and then we'll jump ahead, okay?
Our class tonight, our class tonight is you can know God in this life. Do you believe it? I don't like that laugh. It's amazing to me. Whenever I travel, no matter where it is, here in this country or in Europe or in India or wherever, it is usually that devotees have the attitude, maybe this person or that person can reach the goal, but certainly not I. Now, I tell you, it was during Guruji's lifetime when a woman came on a path. She was 80 years old. And she had not lived before a particularly spiritual life. She was a good woman. And Master said, she will reach the goal in this life because of her great sincerity. Now, is anybody here who is just starting and is 80 years old or older? Would you please raise your hand? Would you please look around, because the lights are so blinding that I cannot see further back. Anybody here? 80 or over and just starting? And good for you. Now you see, Master said about that other one, she can make it in this life, so you can also. And all of you can reach the goal in this life. I think one of the reasons why people may be discouraged, I had myself that experience. When I started with the lessons, one after the other came, and I thought, it is incredible, all that information. Not only that, also in the temple services, all that information. Not only that, all those many things that I'm supposed to practice. How in the world can I absorb it all? How in the world can I practice it all? Do you feel that way sometimes? You are not supposed to. You are not meant to practice everything. Because you have to understand, our Guru came with a special dispensation. He came to bring the teaching for the new ages. And because of this, he had to cover every possible aspect of life, every possible aspect of the spiritual life, every possible aspect of practices. But it is mathematically impossible that we can practice everything. We wouldn't have time for anything else. We wouldn't have time to work, we wouldn't have time to sleep, we wouldn't have time to eat or anything else. You're not meant to practice everything. You can't. Master said to us, if you do 1% of what I tell you to do, you will reach the goal. You feel better now? However, we are supposed to practice the essence, and that everybody can do. And what is the essence? First of all, devotion to God and Guru. Second, practice the basic techniques, and that is energization, exercises, Hangsa, Om technique, and Kriya. Third, work on right attitude towards yourself and God and Guru, your work, the people you live with, people you come in contact with, all the various experiences, conditions, situations that come into your life. And it also includes do the best you can, living in harmony with the laws of God. Even though the world has turned its back on those laws, we have to live according to them. Now this is the essence. And for that, everybody has time. Make time.
All right, that was your introduction to Anandamoy. So great, such an inspirational message. As he said, I think most of us think of attaining God realization as this kind of pipe dream. Maybe it'll happen for me. Maybe if by chance, if I'm chosen. The teachings of Paramahansa and Jesus and all these masters are that you can know God in this life. And what an opportunity, right? And then also to reassure you that if you do only 1% of the things that you're taught, you will reach the goal. Because it is very easy to become overwhelmed with all the different methods and ideas. And this is why Yogananda said to learn Kriya Yoga, because, and I can tell you this, the meditation that he teaches is simply asking God to reveal himself to you, to be close to God, to keep your mind on God in your meditation, and then to carry that meditation into your life. This is what we've been talking about on this channel. Heidi says, sounds like Joseph Smith, the prophet of the West. Yeah, that's what I was saying. I think that it's possible that Joseph Smith had the visions that he had at the same time that Babaji was teaching Lahiri Mahashai in India, that would then be carried to the West by Yogananda. I have a vision of this new age, of this spiritual awakening that we're living in, and we're watching it happen. We're watching the old materialistic, negative paradigm fall away and be replaced with this new paradigm. And I believe that the seeds of this new paradigm were probably found all around the world. The seed of Yogananda, though, is what we're talking about today, and it has created this self-realization fellowship. And if you read the Autobiography of Yogi, you see why. He dedicated every single waking moment to this mission. So his life is an example of a one-mindedness in a lifetime and what it can accomplish. This is what it accomplished. And then the last point that he made, make time, right? Make time for meditation. Make time for prayer and for connecting to God. Maybe you don't sign up for the Kriya Yoga lessons. I think you should. But even if you don't, make the time to focus on God for a period of time. In another one of his talks, he said, and this was in like the 80s, the average person watched 44 hours of television. How many hours do we spend on our phone each week? Dedicate some of that time to God, to the Tao, to the truth, to realizing the truth, your connection to all that is, which is God. Lao Tzu said, we had this quote last week, time is a created thing. To say you don't have time is to say, I don't want to. What are our priorities? What do you guys think? Let me know in the chat. We're going to go to the next clip here. 59:10. Sorry guys, just a second. I want to be able to listen to this without it blasting my ears here. So let's see if this works. I'm switching to headphones and play.
I'll tell you a story. There was a man who heard about an old monk in a Christian monastery. And he heard that he was a very saintly man, so he went to see him. And they talked about various things, and then that man asked him, in all your years as a monk, do you have any regrets? Did you make any mistakes? And the old man said, they call me a Christian, but I have not become Christ. And that man was totally taken aback because he had never heard, of course, about Christ consciousness and that you can become one with Christ consciousness. He thought in terms of becoming the person of Jesus Christ. And he said, well, is Is it possible? Can one become Christ? And the old monk said, ignoring that question, I put distance between him and myself. In my searching, in my reading, in my prayers. And all those years I was deploring that distance. And I did not realize that I was creating it. There is no distance. And this is one of the greatest obstacles on the path, that we create distance, that we do not accept the fact that God and Guru are omnipresent and with us all the time. In our thoughts, we push them away, we think they're far away. Don't do it. This is something that is one of the greatest helps on a spiritual path, one of the greatest helps in your meditation. That you feel God and Guru are closer than you can imagine. And that is why Dayamachaji said those beautiful words. Guruji is as close to you as you permit him to be. Write that down. He is as close to you as you permit him to be. Don't keep him away. And there is another kind of distance, not just space, just a spat, or worse. And that is to keep God at a distance in relationship to you. And Guru also, a relationship between him and you. Don't create distance. A saint said, there is no creature who can realize how much, how sweetly, and how tenderly God loves you. Write that one down. There is no creature who can know, who can imagine how much, how sweetly and how tenderly God loves you. Now this is something that you have to cultivate, that concept, you have to work on that. Take it home with you and work on it, establish it. Tell yourself over and over again. You know, we usually think in terms of, sure, God will eventually love me when I'm perfect, but certainly not now. This is not true. Master told us again and again, he says, God loves you as much as he loves Christ. It is unconditional. Unconditional.
There you have it. I almost feel silly trying to analyze these words because it's so perfectly delivered. But what really struck me here is God loves you as he loves Christ, the same amount. It is inconceivable to us, I think. And we deny it, and that's what keeps us apart from God. That is what I have been experiencing in my meditations, feeling that God and Yogananda and any other spirit or Jesus, anything I call on, it's not that I'm just calling on them throughout time and space. I'm calling on them and then they are there as much as I am there, as much as my house is there or the earth under my feet is there. this practice of meditation is to understand that God is right there. And it relates to me to the Taoist teachings of the Tao is always at our fingertips, at the tip of our nose. It's always right there. It's just that we forget and we pull ourselves away into the past, into the future, or into our ideas, and into these false concepts of separation from God. There's another quote from Anandamoy, from Yogananda. God is as near to those who seek him as you can possibly imagine, and as far as you can imagine from those who seek him not. Yale says, pray 3 times a day. It will change your life. Yes. Yes. And I would add, I think the word meditation and prayer, they're almost interchangeable, but meditation, especially as Yogananda teaches it, is a very specific method of prayer that is a focused method of prayer that uses the scientific understanding of our energy body, our spine, the chakras, and how our body our spirit basically enters from above us. And usually our energy is going down and out. And if we can bring our energy back in and up, then we can experience God. And I believe I've begun to experience it, and there are plenty of descriptions of it in many different books, especially Autobiography of a Yogi. Susan says, Yoda he is. Yes, he is. Isn't he? He sounds like Yoda. I remember when I realized that, I was like, it's like listening to Yoda teach you how to be a Jedi. It's awesome. Eleanor says hi. Hi, Eleanor. Welcome. All right. I do have one more clip for you guys. It's almost 4 o'clock. I'm surprised how fast I got through this stuff, but, again, I don't want to put some time limit on it. I just want to deliver this to you in the most interesting, straightforward way that I can. And I didn't want to put in too much information just to fill up the time, and I didn't want to worry about that. So that's why we have the new format. We're going to have as much time as we need, and then we're going to close it down based on if there's any questions or whatever we do. All right. And if you guys want me to stick around, I think I can until 4:30 if you want. I'm on my last clip there though here. So, actually, I'm sorry. We have 2 more clips. All right. So the next talk is called Getting Along with Others. And we don't have a video for this, unfortunately, but I thought we had to talk about this one because this is the way of service. All right. And Anandamoy's description of this is it's perfect. So let's get right into it. My notes have 3:17. Here we go.
The subject today is the art of getting along with others. Isn't that exciting? Huh? But it took me a long time to understand how important this subject is. It is incredibly important. I almost would say it is as important as meditation. I have big eyes now looking at me, but it is really. If we consider why we are here, it always comes back to that. And I suppose those of you who have been here coming regularly for some time, you have heard me say that about 1,000 times. And that we are in school, that this place, this earth, is not a vacation place. And so the main disciplines, in order to reach our goal, which is oneness with God, the realization of oneness with God, the main discipline is meditation. And that is why Paramahansa Yogananda came with a special dispensation to bring us the techniques, Kriya Yoga. It's not enough. The way I see it, the next important discipline to reach our goal is to learn to live in harmony with other people. It's that important. Now, to the basic principle of this subject. Paramahansa Yogananda said, the greatest happiness, next to divine happiness, is to live in peace with those with whom we have to live every day of the year. This is a very powerful statement, very potent. The greatest happiness, next to divine happiness. What is divine happiness? The bliss of God. And I suppose you heard about that last Sunday, because that was the subject, if I remember correctly. Bliss of God, that is the goal. Oneness with God, oneness with infinite bliss. Now, next to that happiness is the happiness that comes by living in peace, living in harmony with those we have to live with, either in a family or work with, on a work job, or wherever we have to deal with people. Now, this gets right into the very core, the very essence of Paramahansa Yogananda's teachings. It goes into the very core of the science of yoga, the science of the teachings of Jesus Christ, teachings of Krishna, teachings of all the great ones. It goes right into the core of it.
So there you have it. There's only one thing greater than getting along with others, treating other people correctly, and that is loving God and being one with God. And I would say, as we've argued and talked about on this channel, they are one and the same. Jesus said, that which you do unto the least of me, you do unto me. And so the way that we treat others reflects our love for God and for his creation. And as the evidence from near-death experiences shows in the life review, what really matters is how we treat each other. And that is, I believe, as he says here, life is a school. We're here to learn how to treat each other correctly. Through all the trials, through all the difficulties, through all the challenges of being in a physical life, we are here to learn how to treat each other right. There's a clip here that I want to add. Let's see if I can find it in the transcript. Disagreement. No. And maybe I'll have to talk about it another time, or I can just summarize it. So basically, he gives a description of I think it was Dayamata, who was the president of the fellowship for about 50 years, and she talks about how if you have a disagreement with someone close in your life, someone, dear to you, and that disagreement remains unresolved, and then you sit down to pray or to meditate, you're not really meditating because you're worried about this situation. How can we reach stillness and peace in ourselves when we don't have peace in our life? And so this is related to the air element of clearing the air. We need to clear the air with the people in our lives and do our best to treat people well. And then it's just like meditation. There is the ever-expanding bliss of meditation that they describe. There's the ever-expanding bliss of peace and harmony and joy in our relationships that we build through the way of service. All right. Ian says, I just had a huge argument with my son. He blamed me for kicking out his mom. Oh, that is very challenging, my friend. That is very challenging. And I think these two things work together, right? We do our best to treat the people in our life, and we also have a relationship with God so that he can help us to know the way to treat other people. And the only thing I can say in that situation is very difficult. Pray to God for the right words to tell your son. Children, this is something that has always been close to my heart, is how to parent right, and treating our children right is probably the most important relationship we have, because, and I'm sure you guys can remember from your own childhoods, some of the very memorable moments are probably the ones in which your parents made a mistake or said something to you. There's so many stories of where a parent says something to their child that the parent kind of meant as a flippant remark, that they don't remember saying it, but the child remembers them saying it for the rest of their lives. So yes, I think all of these spiritual practices should filter right into our ability to maintain and build our relationships with those closest to us, and especially those relationships we have where we have responsibility for others, like the parent-child relationship. This is probably one of the most primary. The next one being the spouse relationship, and then friends, and then business relationships. Ian says, I didn't know for like 6 years. He brought it up now and held a grudge this whole time. Exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm just saying, and we don't know what's in the mind and hearts of our children. I know with my wife, anytime we have any disagreement, we always try to sort it out. The idea of not going to bed angry. We really believe in that. And with your spouse, they're on your level. You can talk to them. You can ask them what they're thinking and feeling. You can't really do that with your child. And so treating your children is even more important. Treating your children correctly is even more important. That was beautiful, Danny. Thank you, Ian. I hope. Sometimes I feel like I'm just channeling what God wants me to tell you, okay? I don't want to take credit for it for myself. And that's not what it's about. It's not about credit for me. Yale says, we have a parent-child relationship with God, in my opinion. He may ask us to do things or put things in our life that don't make sense to us just because we lack the wisdom to understand, just like a child might not. I was just talking about that today, Yale. Absolutely agree. It's the as above, so below kind of thing. Like our relationship with our children is just like God's relationship with us. And the anecdote for my life is, our children lately have been kind of challenging. They've been doing a lot of whining. They've been doing a lot of complaining. They're screaming for what they want. And I was talking to my wife and to my mom about this, and it's like, what does God do when his children scream and complain at him? He ignores them. And that's what you're supposed to do as a parent of a child who's being, unreasonable. You just ignore them. It's like, all right, good luck with that. If you want to feel that way about not getting another sugar cookie or whatever it is that they're screaming and crying about, that's your problem. And it's the same perspective that God has for us when we make outrageous demands and complaints about our life. He will ignore us. And he will ignore us until we come back and realize, okay, I need to humble myself. What is your wisdom, God? What is your path for me? Not what is my path that I want. I want it this way, just like an insolent child, right? No. What is your high perspective, understanding in my life? Tell me what to do next. And I tell you, if you have that thought as often as you can, your life will be a synchronistic series of events that will blow your mind. That is what all these spiritual teachers are telling. As we've talked about before, the goal is always to be one with God. And I think that is the great challenge and fascination of life, is that there's this infinite array of paths that we can take. But when we choose the path of God, that's when everything works out and everything's easy. And people choose for things to be hard because they choose to turn their back on God, or they don't believe in him, they don't understand. But the proof is there everywhere around us, every day, every moment. Understand why parents might do things. Floods. You're talking about the Great Flood. That is a tough one for a lot of people. You imagine how many people God killed with the flood. But then you understand that the physical life is not the end, right? And that we have infinite spiritual life. And sometimes it's necessary to do something like that when things are getting so bad in the physical world. I think that we can avert that calamity by, as I forget the prophet, but I think it was Lot talking about Sodom and Gomorrah, and he said, if we can find just one good man in the city, will you spare it? And God said, yes. So if we can be that good man, we can save the earth by just being that one righteous man that God spares. Yale says he might do more than ignore, to be fair. He'll show you signs, but you have to be willing to see them. He will also punish you with but with love, just like a parent would punish a child, and not with anger, but with pure love. Right. Yeah, and there's so many stories that I've been listening to of Anandamoy talking about his experiences with Paramahansa, and he has one story where there's a group of people and Paramahansa is yelling at them, and he couldn't believe how much he's yelling at them, and then he sees Anandamoy and he's like, you're doing a great job. And he's like, I can't believe he was so mad and now he's nice to me. Is he faking it? And he realized, no. Paramahansa, he gave his lessons in one way to this group and one way to the other group. And he realized the group that he was yelling at, they had been his students for years. So he was harder on them. I think it's the same with God. God knows where we're at. And so he might be harder on someone who should know better. But also, as you're saying, you have to be willing to see it. He will give you signs. And I really do think that sometimes he ignores us when, that's maybe a complaint that a lot of people have when they go to pray. Like, God is ignoring my prayers. Well, how are you praying? Are you praying in a complaining, like begging way? This is another instruction that I've heard recently from I think it was a different person. There's a couple women who were presidents of the SRF, and they gave some great talks. And they explain, do we come to God as a beggar or as a child? We're supposed to come to God as a child. Come to God as he made you and not as you've made yourself. To make yourself like a child before God and to really ask, dear parent, will you help me in this thing? As opposed to saying, God, give me this thing that I want so badly. Don't you know how badly I want it? Right? It's almost like, are we saying please or not? It's funny to say that because this is this is my life with small children. It's like, you didn't say please, so we're not going to give it to you. But that's life. That's, just like we need to learn how to get along with others, we need to learn how to get along with God. And that relationship is different than all of our other relationships. Yale says, I was just talking about this with my rabbi. Yeah, synchronicity. Exactly this. What to do if you feel like your prayers are not being answered. Yes. And ultimately, what we find is that in order to really be one with God, we really have to let go of our desires. For our prayers to be answered in a particular way, great healing is possible, great events in our life are possible and even likely. But how are they going to happen? In what sequence are they going to happen? You can't define that. God is the one who knows. And so if you pray in a very specific way that you want very specific things, it'll look like your prayers are not being answered. But again, you have to watch for the signs that he sends and not the signs that you're asking for. Although sometimes you can ask for particular signs and sometimes he'll give them to you. Again, sometimes he will give you what you're asking for. But sometimes he won't, and it's up to you to kind of figure out why. It's a long answer, but a lot of it is asking, how can I serve you, and not what can you do for me? Exactly. All right. Let's watch this last clip. It's about 4 minutes long. 2409. Here we go.
And to think of others, to be thoughtful of others. And here's another point now. Paramahansa Yogananda said, a man who cannot get along with others is one who does not get along with himself. Now, sometimes I have seen people who may have difficulties personally and be very loving, very kind to others. But generally speaking, it is when we are down in the dumps, we see everything wrong. And just the other day, I had a talk with one of the young novices. And he asked me, he said, if I see something wrong in another monk, is it okay for me to tell him what's wrong? I said, well, it's better to lift this up to his counselor. He said, yeah, but if I see something wrong, I really feel like telling him. I said, why don't you send a note to his counselor? And then I told him a story. I said there were a couple monks who went to the master complaining about another one. And master patiently listened. And when they were finished, he said, change yourself. And then the monk said, it is true. When I feel good, everything is okay. And when I'm down, I want to criticize everybody. I said, yes, that is a reflection of your own consciousness. And so the basic thing is we have to work on ourselves. There was a couple, they had been married for 20 years, and finally they came to the conclusion they could not live together anymore. They had to get a divorce. So they went to a professional counselor, not to get any counseling for marriage because they had decided to divorce, but they wanted him to help them to get through the divorce so that it would be easier. And he listened to them and he said, now I want you to go home. And both of you ask yourself, what is it like to be married to me? And he said, well, we don't want to do that. We have already decided we cannot live together anymore. We have to get a divorce. And he said, now you go home and you ask that question. So reluctantly, they said, all right, we'll do that. And they did. What it is like to be married to me. And they both came to the conclusion, I have to change. And they really recognize, I have to change. I have work to do on myself. And after some time, that counselor called them and said, well, what about the divorce? And they said, we don't want to get a divorce. Our marriage is getting better all the time. Now, that doesn't apply only to marriage, That can apply to the workplace and wherever we are, where we have to deal with people, asking ourselves, what is it like to be working with me? What is it like to be in my company? And really sincerely asking those questions. And the master said, this is not just for our own sake. This has to do with world conditions. It is the inner harmony of the individual human souls who comprise the various nations and the social structures in them that will bring peace to man and to this world.
All right. That's my taste of Anandamoy for you guys today. Let's talk about that one. This idea, so I want to respond. Yale says, I'm not sure I feel that when I'm down in the dumps. Yeah, I think it's different for everyone, right? We all have our own challenges, the things that take us away from God, take us away from the way of service, treating people the way that we should. I know for me, definitely, when I'm upset, there's the drama triangle, and there's a particular role that you might fall into. There's the rescuer, the victim, and the persecutor. And I'm definitely a persecutor. So when I'm upset or unhappy, I kind of blame people. And that's kind of what he was describing here, was people who are blaming people. And also, of those three, the persecutor is probably the loudest. So he's relating stories of what's happened in his experiences. He's talking about persecutors, and Paramahansa listened to their complaints and then says, change yourself. It's such powerful advice. Again, what is inside us is reflected outside of us. The frequency that our heart emits is the frequency that we get from others. And there's so many stories about this. There's that story of a guy who, leaves. Maybe you've heard this. It's an old story of guy goes to a town. He thinks all the people there are crooks. They're stealing from him. They're treating him poorly. He goes to another town. Same thing happens. Everyone there, he thinks they're crooks. He thinks they're treating him unfairly. He goes to a third town. Same thing happens. Finally, on the way out of the third town, he meets a wise man on the road. And the wise man asks him, "Are you trustworthy? Are you easy to get along with?" Maybe eventually when you see the same pattern over and over, where you're not getting along with the people around you, it's time to change yourself. Yale says, "For me, it's road rage." That's funny. What are the three again? What three are you referring to, Yale? The three... Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean. Which three you're asking about. All right, everybody. We still have 6 people here. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe buttons if you're enjoying this stream. As I said, I'm here every Friday at 3 p.m. Although, actually, I need to make the announcement. We got 7 people here. Probably won't have a stream next Friday or the following Friday. I'm going out of town. I'm going on a poker trip to Las Vegas. My last poker trip was monumental in my spiritual journey. So I'm expecting this next one to be monumental as well. Although I also am realizing anything can happen. God could do anything for me. Maybe I'm there just to talk to one person. And that's the whole point of the trip. And the rest of the trip is going to be boring or whatever. I'm sure it won't be too boring. I'll try to keep you guys updated. Part of me was thinking maybe I should do some live streams just on my phone. Let me know in the chat what you think about that. If you want me to do a live stream from my phone, it probably won't be at the same time, but I might be able to do that just to check in with you guys, say hi. We'll figure it out. But next Friday at 3 p.m., I'll be playing in the Monster Stack event of the World Series of Poker. Oh, the drama triangle. Yeah, so the persecutor, the victim, and the rescuer. My wife is a rescuer, and so is my mom. They're both rescuers. So that's when they see a victim, they get in there and they help and they help and they help. And the dynamic that's negative about it, right? So all of these there are positive and negative aspects to all 3 roles. Sometimes someone does need to be told that they're wrong. That's the persecutor. But more often, it is not correct to tell someone they're wrong. It's better to follow the path of non-action, to hold your tongue. And that's what actually Bobby, who was in here last week, he told us non-action is the way to escape the drama triangle. So the rescuer jumps in and tries to fix everything. The persecutor gets it going. And then the victim is the person who's like, poor me. I'm always being attacked. They make themselves into a victim no matter what the situation. And again, sometimes people are victims. Sometimes they are really being victimized. But we all know those people who fall into that role of victim. So those are the 3 dysfunctional, dysfunctional trauma, the trauma triangle. Maybe we should talk about the trauma triangle next time. As I said, that might be in 3 weeks. In 2 weeks from today, I might be back in town, depending on how things go. I might try to do a live stream from the road. We'll see. I'll keep you guys updated. All right. It's 4:24. We're losing viewers. I guess we're losing steam. But I think it was a good one. I really enjoyed this one. Thank you guys for interacting. Thank you, Yale, for all of your comments there. That was really helpful. I love talking about it. Ian, I hope your situation with your son improves. That sounds very challenging. And I'd love to speak with you more about it. I'm sure I will. All right. Yale says, I'm not sure which I am, which isn't good. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if everybody is definitely one or another. In my experience, most people are. I realized recently that I was a persecutor. I was thinking about this, talking to people about it, and then I was like, oh, yeah, I'm a persecutor. Maybe that's why I can have a show, so I can talk about it. And if you guys know the story, like the original reason I started this was like, I got to tell the world to stop acting this way. That's why I started the way of service. I was like, we got to fix it. Susan says, thank you for more information, more life to digest, of course. Susan says, I'm a fixer. That's rescuer. Yes. Yes, indeed. I understand that. Yeah, click the like button, Susan says. See, it's almost 4:30. We pushed it almost an hour and a half. I got started a little late, but so that is Anandamoy Paramahansa. Let's see. I can oops. So definitely check out Autobiography of a Yogi. And the line of masters, here they are again. Check out the Self-Realization Fellowship YouTube channel. They've even got shorts. Like, they've got everything. It's pretty cool. Eleanor says, my guess is people take on different roles in different relationships. Yeah, I'd imagine that's true as well. And, you know, we've all fallen into all the roles, you know. And yeah, I think it depends on what's going on in your life, what's going on in the relationship, for sure. It'd be definitely interesting to talk about this topic some more. I think it's come up a lot on the live stream, so we should definitely talk about it some more. I'll do some research and bring it to you guys. Yale says, that's a good point. It's probably different between any two people's relationships, right? Susan says, rescuer I am. Wears you out. Yeah, I mean, I think they all wear you out in different ways, right? Like, as a persecutor, I think it really hurts your relationships. It makes people not like you. It's not good. Yeah, as a rescuer, definitely what I've observed of rescuers is that they're always giving of themselves. They erase themselves out of the equation, and they just do everything that they can for other people. And they don't know how to take care of themselves. And then the victim, I mean, it's like people who are chronically ill. They become identified with their problems. You know, they write a story about their life that they had this problem. And so ultimately their story is of being a victim of this problem, and so they can't escape that reality. Eleanor says, you might be a persecutor mostly, but when with certain people, you might slip into victim. Right. Yeah. Yep, I agree. Well, I think you guys gave me my next topic. Of course, I never feel strictly, I'm never like, this is definitely going to be the topic. I try to follow my intuition. I follow God's guidance, follow my highest excitement, which I believe is part of God's guidance, onto what is going to be the topic of the next live stream. Yale says, does the rescuer try to control everything, or would that be something different? I don't think so. I think that falls probably more under the persecutor. You know, a persecutor is somebody who's like, hey, you're not doing it this way. This is the right way. And the persecutor doesn't let people be who they are, you know, with their own methods and understandings of situations. I know that I have healed my own persecutorness through really allowing people to be who they are. And when people annoy me, keeping my mouth shut, you know, I think that's important. It's not up to me to always point out what somebody needs to do differently. And, you know, there's moments to share your thoughts and there's moments not to. All right. It's 4:30. We've got the least views we've had yet, but I'm still talking to you guys. So Yale says that gives more clarity. Thanks. Yeah. And, you know, there's whole books written on this topic. It's a very popular framework. It's called the drama triangle. So I encourage you to look into it and learn more. And I'm sure we'll be talking about it soon. So in any case, I'm Danny. This has been the Way of Service live stream every Friday at 3 p.m. I love you guys, and I will see you either next week or in a couple weeks. We'll see. I'll let you know.